I was just realizing as I was sitting here, tighten this up a little bit, although this is absolutely in the wrong place for me because I am one of those people who gestures frequently and I'm going to have to sit here rigidly or otherwise I'm going to be hitting this every 12 seconds. But I was thinking to myself, you know, when I was planning what to bring with me to read from the new book, The Navigator's Children, and I was thinking, okay, I have to find things that are not full of spoilers because, you know, I don't want to ruin the things I've been building up for years and years. But then just now I realized, well, wait a second. If the second half of the Into the Narrow Dark is just coming out here, then the people who read in German haven't finished the third part, therefore anything at the fourth part, at Navigator's Children, is going to be a spoiler. So you're going to be spoiled. I'm just telling you ahead of time. You're going to be spoiled no matter what if you haven't actually read all the way through the third volume.
But they probably have because everything is Narrow Dark is completely out.
I know. But just if they haven't had a chance to read it, it's a rather long book. They are a bit long. But anyway, so I'm just warning you in advance because I'm going to start out by saying at the end of the Into the Narrow Dark, as it's called in English, see, this thing's already giving me trouble. At the end of Into the Narrow Dark, there's let's just put it this way, there is a large conflagration at the Hayholt. Many exciting, terrifying, upsetting things happening at the castle that has been at the center of so much of these stories since a time before man had fire. You know, way back when I started these things with the Dragonbone Chair. It's always in part been about the Hayholt. And the Hayholt has, at the end of the third volume, the one that Ylva was just reading from, is in serious trouble. So that's what you need to know. The other two things you need to know, if you don't know them already, is that the characters here, there's really only three characters that are important. One of them is Miriamel, who is the queen, and the grandmother of Morgan, about whom Ylva was just reading. The other is Jeza, who is a young woman from the Ran, which is the swampy part of the world that Tiamat and some other characters are from. But Tiamat's not in this bit, so don't worry. And Saracina, who is, Jeza was the Duchess of Naban's nurse and took care of her baby Saracina, who is a very, very little girl, a babe in arms, as we would say. So those are the only three characters you really need to know about. But what you also need to know, and I think if you read any of the third volume, you're probably aware of this, both Miriamel and Simon think the other has died. And that is, you know, something that it is what we call dramatic irony. The reader knows, the characters do not. I was taught this in hideous and boring length by my 7th grade English teacher. Dramatic irony. So anyway, that's what's going on. Those are most of the characters you need to know about. Oh, and so Miriamel and Jeza, Miriamel was helped to escape from a very unpleasant character who had essentially kidnapped her. And Jeza helped her to get away. And Miriamel is trying to get back to her home, the Hayholt, to put things to right. Because as far as she's concerned, things are very bad there and she needs to be there. So, that's what's going on in a general sense. And now I'm going to read. This way at least I will not be whacking the microphone all the time. Chapter 1, They Bite Fierce. Fincher, the captain of the Elysiamanza, that's a boat, was a thick, bewhiskered man with a maimed left hand. He spoke surprisingly softly most of the time, except to his crew, at whom he bellowed like a madman about what seemed to Jeza the most mundane shipboard matters. 3 bells! He would howl so loudly that Jeza had to move away from him. Where that bar? And when she would try to make her way from one end of the pitching ship to the other, he would sometimes shout, "Wet duck, m'lady!" so loudly from right behind her that she could have sworn he had crept up on her just to do it. For someone who had spent much of her life in and around boats, Jeza was finding it difficult to enjoy the voyage. The cog on which she and the Queen sailed, along with quite a few fighting men, and almost as many sailors who seemed always to be up in the ropes, whistling, I hate when this happens. Where we go? There we go. But now I'm going to probably have to find the spot again. Yes, of course. This is the real problem with reading off a phone. It keeps trying to tell me other things that are going on in the world that I don't care about. All right. Here we go. Okay. The cog on which she and the Queen sailed, along with quite a few fighting men and almost as many sailors who seemed always to be up in the ropes, whistling like birds and swinging like monkeys, rose up in the front and the back so far that it almost dizzied Jeza to look over the bow rail at the churning river below. In her childhood, the boats had all been low, flat things, usually poled or rowed by one person, and so low to the water that the younger Jeza could even trail her hand in the green ran waters, at least until her father or uncles reminded her about the crocodiles. On the second day, Jeza joined Miriamel and Captain Fincher on the high castle-shaped structure at the rear of the ship, which end she had learned was called the stern. Since she had little Saracina in her arms, Jeza kept her feet planted solidly on the deck and well away from the ship's rail. Why are they rowing when yesterday the sail was up? She asked the captain. I can feel wind, and it seems no less strong. Ah, there's a good question, m'lady, said Fincher in a gentle, serious voice. The answer's simple enough. Yesterday, we set sail with the sea tide under us. Today, we must row against it, because the Glenywent River is against us. Hoy! He suddenly shouted. Making Jeza jump. Beshrew me, what are you about there? Mind that yard! He saw her put her hand to her pounding heart and was all apologies. Oh, so sorry, m'lady. Meant no harm, just these be-damned skiving sailors. He made a fretful face. Oh, and sorry for the cursing, your majesty. It's not often we have the tender ears of royalty on board. Fact, it's never happened before. Do not worry, Captain, said Miriamel. You should hear my husband when he is in a rage. Once the Archbishop fainted dead away at one of Simon's outbursts. Her smile faltered. Jeza quickly said to Captain Fincher, If I am not impolite to ask, sir, what happened to your hand? Fincher looked at the extremity in question for a moment, as if he had nearly forgotten it. The two smaller fingers were gone, puckered lumps of flesh, all that remained. Ah, that. Well, m'lady, it were a rope. They bite fierce, especially when they're tied to a sinking anchor. Begging your pardons and hoping that weren't too unpleasant to speak about. She asked, Captain, said Miriamel. No need to apologize. He nodded and thanked her, then made his excuses, bowed low to the Queen, and stumped down the stairs to upbraid the oarsman in a voice like a war horn. Miriamel was silent for a while, but before Jeza could summon up a subject of conversation to distract her from her sorrows, the Queen said, And how is the little one? Is she feeding well? Yes, Majesty. Many people in Merriman told me sea air improves the appetite, and it seems true for Saracina. But not for me. She shook her head. She had been sick several times the day before, and the only reason the pitching voyage had not sent her to the rail again was that her stomach was empty. "It's not sea air, though," said the Queen. "It's river air, since we're on the river. I don't know if that works the same way." She sighed. "It is so slow traveling against the current. It will be dark long before we reach the Kinslaw." Jeza did not know anything about the broad Kinslaw, but she knew that was the place Miriamel planned to leave the ship before advancing on the castle with soldiers. She had wondered why they would not simply berth at one of the castle docks, until she realized that Queen Miriamel did not expect a friendly welcome. How strange, Jeza thought, for a queen to come home after most of a year and expect not a welcome from her admiring subjects, but an attack by those left to protect the place. Miriamel was stroking Saracina's small head where the blanket exposed it. "I must have been mad to let you talk me into this arrangement," she said, then gave Jeza a shrewd look. "I know you would not leave the baby unless you had to, but why were you so bent on coming with me?" Jeza thought for a moment before answering. "Because I trust no one else." The Queen was surprised. "What do you mean? The people at Merrimond, Lady Dorrit and all would have treated you well, as would many others, especially with you under my protection. And did you not trust Duchess Canthia and the others in Naban?" Jeza was concerned that she had confused the Queen, but she was not entirely certain she understood it herself, so she did her best to order her thoughts before replying. "I trusted them not to hurt me, Majesty. I trusted Canthia because I was her friend since we were children, though she forgot that sometimes." At the thought of her friend and mistress, tears came to her eyes. Holding Saracina with both arms, she could not wipe them. A moment later, to Jeza's astonishment, the Queen reached out and gently rubbed the tears away with the back of her finger. "You loved the Duchess, didn't you?" "Of course. She was a good person. She did not deserve..." And then the tears came again, this time in floods. At last she handed the baby to Miriamel so she could wipe her eyes properly. I am sorry, Majesty. Nothing to apologize for. But you still haven't answered my question. Why do you trust me more than anyone else? Because queens, rulers in general, are notoriously bad risks for trust. For one thing, we seldom see people as individuals because we are always thinking of them as subjects, as part of a nation. But that is it, Jesus said. You are not that way. Everyone in Naban saw me as a servant, or as Canthia's childhood friend, or as a woman of the Ran. Not one of them ever looked at me and saw me. Miriamel looked skeptical. If you are saying that I saw the truth of who you really are, Jeza, I'm afraid you're mistaken. Only in the time we have spent together have I come to know how clever and brave you are. But you did not make a mask for me to wear. I don't understand. Jeza was frustrated. She had set out to tell the Queen how much she respected her, but had made a muddle of things. It is what we say in the Ran, or at least on Red Pig Lagoon, where I grew, when someone thinks they know a person before they do. That you never did, Majesty. When you met me, you did not see just another servant, just a dark-skinned girl from the swamp. What you did not know at first, you waited to find out. That is rare. The Queen looked at her for a long time. And think Westerling is your second tongue. You astonish me, Jeza, and you shame me, too. I would like to believe I am the person you think I am. I would admire such a person, too, but I am afraid I am far more flawed than that." Jeza laughed, which is just what such a person always says when others praise them. "Do you see what I mean?" said Miriamel, and now she was smiling too. "Too clever by half." She started to hand back Saracina, then stopped long enough to plant a kiss on the child's half-exposed forehead. "Look at her, on a ship in a country she's never been in, and she's just sleeping like a crocodile," said Jeza. Miriamel laughed, startled. "I was going to say like a baby, but it seemed too obvious. Do crocodiles sleep a lot?" "They pretend. It looks like they are asleep, but truly they are watching." "I don't think Saracina is pretending to be asleep." "I know." Jeza smelled the baby, whispered a few words to her before turning to the queen again. "And anyway, she will not bite. No teeth." Mary sighed. "It's hard to wait. I want to see my home again. I want to see my people again." She shook her head as if to clear away cobwebs. "Enough of that. How do you fare? Do you think you could eat something?" Jeza shuddered. "Not yet, but the baby will be hungry soon. I could use a little something myself. Let's go see what Captain Fincher has to offer us." Because Jeza was carrying the baby, Miriamel held her elbow as they went down the stairs from the castle to the main deck. And I'm going to skip ahead over another section of different characters, and we will get to the ending of this chapter. Miriamel did not know what hour of the clock it was, only that she had been asleep. She struggled upright, tatters of dream falling away. Someone knocked again. "Who?" asked Jeza, rolling over and pulling the baby to her. Still muzzy with sleep, Miriamel reached for the knife she kept close, then put her bare feet on the floor. "Come in, then," she said. The sailor in the doorway was holding a hooded lantern. Mary lifted her hand to shield her eyes from the glare. "Begging pardon, Your Majesty," he said. "Captain Fincher and Lord Norvell ask you to join them on the foredeck." She wiped her eyes. "What time is it?" "An hour left of the early watch, Majesty. Sun's just coming up." He hesitated. "Captain asks you to put this on, if you please, ma'am." He held out what looked like a heavy bundle. "What is happening, Majesty?" asked Jeza from the bed. "Nothing. Go back to sleep." Miriamel took the offered garment, thinking it was a heavy, thick cloak against the cold weather, but the weight of it surpassed any cloak she had ever lifted. She almost dropped it in surprise. "This is armor." "Yes, Your Majesty. Captain says please put it on, then come to the foredeck." "I do not know how to do it," she said. "Help me." If it had not been the middle of the night, and if she had not been worried about why the captain had summoned her, the following moments would have been rare comedy. Though Miriamel wore a nightdress and had pulled a shawl around her shoulders, the lieutenant kept averting his eyes as though she were naked, which meant he was more of a hindrance than a help with the sagging, overlarge shirt of chain mail. "Let us hope that I do not have to run away from anything," she observed, as the sailor tried blindly to fasten the catch on the back of the armor. At last he found it and stepped away, still looking tactfully in any direction except where she stood. Miriamel felt weighed down already, as if she had worn one of her court dresses into the bath. "Lead on," she said. No, walk behind me until we are on deck, please, in case I fall backward down the stairs." At first all she could see was black water and an eastern horizon delicately washed with the pink and orange of early dawn. She followed the lieutenant up to the raised forecastle, where the captain and Baron Norval were waiting for her. When they saw her, the Baron bent a knee, and the captain bowed. "It is early, Captain Fincher," she said. "I did not expect to be awakened yet, and I think you might have found me something warmer than this for me to wear." She lifted an arm weighted with a wide armored sleeve. "My apologies, Majesty," he said, "but I did not want to take chances." "You do look a bit like Saint Ebbe drowned in a barrel," said Norval. "Thank you, Baron. That makes me feel holier, if not warmer." She turned back to the captain. "May I ask why you called for me?" Fincher was staring over the side at the black water. The rosy glow on the horizon tipped the waves with light. "Look, Majesty, do you see that?" Mary advanced to the rail of the forecastle and looked down. A confusion of slippery, gleaming shapes fell and rose among the swells. She thought they must be dolphins. "Yes, and?" "Those be Kilpa, Majesty, at the mouth of the Kinslow." She stared as one of the shapes rolled in the water, revealing the gleam of eyes and the black hole of a mouth, before slipping beneath the waves again. She felt a moment of disgust and unease, but was not badly frightened. 6 Kilpa were not much danger to a ship carrying 200 armed soldiers. "I have seen Kilpa before, Captain, and though it does disturb me to see them so far north of their usual haunts, I have already heard many tales of this. Was it truly necessary to call me from my bed? Apologies, your bed, since we have taken your cabin, to see this?" "I did not call you out in the cold to see Kilpa, Majesty," said Fincher. For the first time she noted the tremor in his voice, and her heart sank a little. "Then what?" "You'll see in a moment, when the Glennywent bends again at the inlet, and we pass the headland." As the captain spoke, Baron Norval moved closer, as if to shield her from something, and for the first time since the knock on the cabin door, Miriamel's heart began to speed. She did not have long to wonder. Within a few moments they slid past the great black cliff that had been blocking their view, and the Elysiumanza entered the Kinslow. "Mother of God," she said in a hushed, choked voice. "Mother of God, what is that? What has happened?" The horizon had not been turned orange by the light of the dawn she now saw, but by flames mounting to the sky from the far shore. "I fear it is the Hayholt, Majesty," said Norval, his voice empty of its usual cheer. "It is on fire." Mary stared at the flames, whose towering heights almost seemed to scorch the low clouds, an inferno that stretched from high Swert Cliff all the way to the seawall edging the Kinswood. "God save us," was all she could say.